It's funny when you say, I'm helping the kids. It happens very often where people come to me and they say, Michael, I want to help the kids. And I go, that's not how this works. They're the ones that are going to be helping you. Trust me.
Hi, Schmoozers. Welcome back to the show. I'm David Cobby, and you're about to listen to another amazing episode of Schmoozing Time, the only show inspiring proud Jews to leverage their personal brands. Before we dive into this episode, make sure you're following the show on whatever platform you're listening on. That way, you'll never miss an episode. All right, Schmoozers. This week's guest is what happens when a psychotherapist, an extreme athlete, and a motivational powerhouse all collide. Meet Michael Newman, a man who has built his brand on proving that no obstacle, whether it's mental, physical, or otherwise, stands a chance against grit, resilience, or even a good pair of sneakers. Michael isn't just about helping people. He's about launching them, sometimes literally, over life's hurdles. As the founder of Ji4Life, he empowers the youth with physical challenges to take on extreme sports, because why just talk about resilience when you can teach others to live it? And speaking of athletes, Michael has climbed, flipped, and sprinted his way through American Ninja Warrior twice, won LeBron James's $1 Million Mile, and recently appeared on Mr. Beast Games like it was just another Tuesday. Michael is a living example of what it means to embrace challenges, turn them into opportunities. And he isn't just about competing. He's also about inspiring, pushing limits, and proving that resilience is the ultimate superpower. Please welcome to the show, the mitzvah athlete, Michael Newman. Michael, how are we doing today, brother?
Holy cow, that was intense. Howdy, everyone.
Man,
I'm very happy to be here. That was appreciative of the kind words on that.
Man, it doesn't even like we don't even touch on like who you are in that intro. That's just like setting people up for who you are. Like that, like there's so much to you. Like we've had, oh my God. I mean, just from talking on the phone with you, from stalking your social media, like I can tell this one's gonna be an incredible conversation. So good to have you on the show. I'm glad we figured out our technical difficulties right before this.
I'm
go
interested.
ahead.
What's your intro in life?
What is
Flipping it on everyone? I'm flipping it on you. What's your intro for Schmoozing Time?
Wow.
It brings light to the world of people, gaining access to information, trying to enlighten us all. What's your intro?
Wow, Michael, we're getting deep already, and we're not even 3 minutes in. I would say if I had to give myself an intro, like if I was introducing myself on a podcast, you're saying, okay, what I would say, and I want to try and be humble here, is, and this is again off the top of my head, is today's guest is a man who's known for his schmoozing abilities. He loves to speak very loudly and proudly about his Judaism. He is a relentless hard worker and will work until people tell him not to. He is an absolute grinder. And he loves his podcast, loves work, loves sports, loves family, loves his girlfriend, loves his friends. He's a very passionate man. Please welcome to the show, David Cobby. That's what I would say.
Hey.
That's all. So I feel like such an idiot now. I just gave myself an intro, and like now I feel like
you can't give others intros and not give yourself an intro. You got to,
Valid.
I loved that. I heard a lot of love. You said passion, and I think an ability to, in all of that, from what I'm hearing, touch people and connect with people. So I thought that was awesome. Thank you for sharing with me and everybody else. That's cool.
Of course, Michael. And we got to get to sharing about you now. Enough about me. We got a lot to get through.
Sure.
And I know I just gave you an intro, but ready? I'm gonna like do the reverse. I'm gonna pull the reverse Uno card on you. So I gave you an intro. You told me to give myself an intro. Now you have to give yourself an intro. So in, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes, who is Michael Newman?
It's such an interesting thing because it's always such a simple question that is asked. And I ask it all the time in my therapy practice. And it is the most hardest question that I think most people have the hardest time dealing with. If I be honest with myself in this moment, what's coming up for me is Michael Newman is an entity or someone who every day has an opportunity to connect, be, and understand things, which then allows me, I'm going very deep, which then allows me to impact the world second to second to second. And that can change on every given day. However, I think who I am is someone who is trying to find who I am every single day. However, what I stand for, which is really what you're asking, what you're asking for is,
Yes.
I am trying to make an impact as much as I can with every second I have and every day I have. I try to discover discover that ability every day, and we all have that power and energy, life force that God, Hashem, energy gives us. And I think I stand for allowing people the space to be powerful, which then I have to make sure that I have that as well. So to be confident and strong human being, then that allows other people to sing who they are as well. And then also to be in charge of, creating that environment for others, whether that's walking down the street, whether that's creating a nonprofit, my practice, my friendships, my relationship with Hashem, with God. I think that's who I am. Very deep, but simply put, someone who's just looking to do good every single day.
I love how you got very deep there. I like deep thinkers on my show. I don't like people that like to scratch the surface and state the obvious. And one deep thing that you mentioned is your connection with Hashem. And I think everybody connects with Hashem, or if there's somebody non-Jewish listening to this, their God, or if you're an atheist, whatever, like
Energy, Mother.
energy.
Yeah.
There's for me, for you and I, we both acknowledge that that Hashem, we have the same God. And I think for someone like you that's right now wearing a kippah, that's a very proud Jew, that does a lot within the Jewish community as well, there's a lot to be said about how you represent yourself to other people. A lot of what I talk about on this podcast is personal branding, but that starts with your connection with God and your connection with your culture. So if you don't mind me asking, go ahead.
And yourself.
And yourself. Yes. I mean, this all ties in. So my question to you is, if you could, and we're getting deep here, how would you describe your connection with Hashem?
So it's an amazing question, and the question is, does physicality and spirituality coexist together? In a simplified version of your question. And to start there, I would say yes and no. I always like the yes and no. However, I think that if everything is, if we're going to go from an energy standpoint, right, and we're going to go that everything is interconnected, right? Molecules right now are going into the table, going out of the table. There's so much things that we don't understand, and to understand that Hashem is us and we are Hashem. That's a very confusing thing to understand. But it means, and by the way, if I get this correctly, I think Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai, right, Sinai, comes together and calls everybody. And I might have misremembered this, but something to the extent of he connects all of our neshamas, all our souls, with God. Meaning that we were all separate and then we all became one neshama, one spiritual entity that is connected with God. So whether we're connected, with God or not, I would like to, think we are. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did, is he pulled us all together so that we're not separate. And there's a power in being together. I think one of the things I've learned is that being connected to others, to spirituality, to God and things like that, that is really that's the key to life. It's one of the keys to life, but that's definitely the cheat code.
Yes.
Right. And everyone always talks about being connected and, that we're one with the earth and things like that. It's very hard to do because we have the physical side that brings us away from that. However, while it's drawing us away from that, if we lean into it, it actually gets us there faster. So one of the analogies that I say, I'm now, one of the analogies I say is if you're in a riptide,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about wanting control. So one of the things when you're asking about, does the physicality stop us from connecting with Hashem? It's not the physicality aspect that stops us. It's wanting to be in control, wanting to be the secondary God, right? Even though, type of thing. And it's very Amuna based. It's very type of thing, but to understand that. And one of the things that we say all the time is we say, thank you, Hashem. We say, oh, God's in control, but do we actually feel that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a riptide in South Florida, ocean knowledge here. If you're if you're in a riptide, born and raised, so if you're in a riptide, the first instinct that you have as a human being
Mm-hmm.
is get the hell out of that riptide, right? And swim out of the riptide. However, if you wanted to survive, and by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, riptide is a body of water that has a current, kind of in some sort of, faction that it will basically suck you in and drag you down into the water. And most people drown in riptides. The reason is because people panic and they try to swim out of the riptide. They try to, go out of the riptide. And it's the worst thing you can do because you're trying to say, I have control to get out of this. The best thing you can do is to not swim. Get as much air as you can. The riptide takes you under. Hopefully it spits you back out and, in your lung capacity. You get more oxygen, takes you back under, and you ride that wave until eventually it spits you out. And that's how you survive a riptide. And that's I like to use that analogy for life. And that allows you, right, to manage the situation, but also be with the situation. That's a big meditation word, whether you like it or not. So we all say, God is in control, God is in control. But will we actually just put our hands down, take our hands off the steering wheel in a moving car? No, you wouldn't. That's nuts. And one of the stories I have is I did a Spartan race for to understand what are the athletes in my nonprofit that they go through. They were visually impaired, blind. And so I blindfolded myself and I did a Spartan race. For anyone that doesn't know, a Spartan race is 3 miles in the mud, usually mountainous terrain, 20 different obstacles, very army-esque, very tough, 10-foot walls, barbed wire crawls, things like that. And my nonprofit, one of the things, we take the kids through these intense races, and I'm sure we'll get there at some point. But for this example, I start, right? And I had competed in the morning, so I knew the whole course. I knew everything that was laid out. And we start, and I put the blindfold on, and I have someone guiding me.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, I panicked. This was a while ago. And it was such an amazing understanding. Why would I panic? First off. Second off, the first half mile I knew had no obstacles, and I was very concerned I'd bump into an obstacle. And the main reason I think is I lost sense of control, right? Now I'm vulnerable, right? Which is a thing that our brains don't like to do. And then the hardest thing, which was fascinating, is I didn't trust the guide that was guiding me through the race for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so say, God, you're in control. But the second we lose a little bit of control, we either panic, try to regain the control, or I don't know what else. the right thing to do to connect the physical and the spirituality is to feel it in your body because that's what I didn't have my eyes. I felt that I had to surrender. And eventually I got to the point where the guy was completely in control. He told me where to go. I worked with him, and now we're working together to get through this race instead of me panicking, wanting to quit, wanting to go off, and so the only way forward is to trust Hashem and yourself, that you both can work in tandem. That's connecting spirituality and physicality, which is releasing a lot of the control you have. I'm not saying put yourself in dangerous positions, but quiet the part of the brain that wants to be in control.
Wow. I don't know how I can come back from that answer. I just have a million more questions after that. Wow. I'm just no words for that answer. I like the way that you described and answered my very hard question about connecting
I loved it. Thank you.
of course. I love asking hard questions. I mean, so much to go in there. And one of the things right off the top of my head is you talk about the physical world, you talk about your Spartan races, right? You're an extreme athlete. And I think, and this might ruffle some people's feathers, but when you think of a typical Jewish person, you don't think of them as an athlete. You don't think of them as somebody that's being fit or in shape or actively goes to the gym or cares about their physical health, right? And it's sad that this is the reality where a good majority, I mean, you can make this argument for Americans too, but especially Jewish people, like we eat like absolute chazers on Shabbat and don't, go work that off in the gym on Sunday. We, it's just like, it's a thing. It's acceptable to put a lot of food in our body, but then also not take care of our body in an appropriate way. So as somebody that is a proud Jew, religious Jew, and an extreme athlete, right? Why is it so important to you to be not only in good mental shape, but also physical shape?
Do you want the simple answer or you want the therapist answer?
Oh man.
Exactly, right? I'm gonna say that we'll start with the deep and then I'll simplify it. I think why is it so important? Because I definitely try to live my life in a life of balance. That's why when you give me that wonderful intro, I instinctively go, well, I'm just another schmojo person that's makes mistakes. That's a human being. That's not, no one should, no one needs to be looking at me. They all have it in themselves,
Mm-hmm.
And the way, the thing that we've unfortunately fell into in a society is that's being trapped, that power. That environment is suppressing us instead of enlightening us, or not the best word, and suppressing us instead of uplifting us, right? And one of the ways I feel to get there is through a sense of balance. If you're doing all or nothing in an extreme standpoint, it's going to hold you either in that all or nothing,
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. So it's finding the balance for yourself, right? With extreme things. And, everyone probably thinks I eat super healthy. That's not true. you know, I've had at times where I'm eating extremely clean, but I'm trying to have a balance. I spoke with, definitely changed my mindset in a lot of things. An amazing woman, Lindsay Webster, amazing athlete. And it was, I think, in London OCR championships. I met her there, and she's like the goat of Spartan racing, obstacle course racing. And I said, so how do you eat? Like, what's your eating thing? And she said, like, I want the same eating habit that I'm going now that I'll have at 80 years old. Is what you're doing sustainable? So really, to now simplify your question, it's important for me to make that balance of fitness, mental health, wellness, Judaism, connectivity, in all a balanced way, because that is, I feel, for at least myself, obviously, by the way, sometimes you have to go extreme to find that balance for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're not healthy and fit, well, maybe for 6 months, you got to like just go nuts for it. And then that will give you more skills and tools. And then you can find, and then, go, find another way. Don't just stick with that, find another way to balance it out. So I think to me for that is very important. And it's funny because I started my journey with Spartan racing trying to break that stigma, right? In the way that people then will say, oh, if there's a fit Jew, then, oh, I'm incorrect. I had a couple people when I raced competitively in Spartan
Mm-hmm.
that was like, oh, I didn't know a Jew can do that. I didn't know someone like you could do that, and because I had beaten them. Which was it's very funny. I'm going to share something very interesting, and I don't know why I decided to share this. I don't really care if I win or lose, which is funny. My brother has been like, that's not true. You've done high competitions on TV and things, and I went, it's that I care if I give it my all or not. I had a lot more to give. That would be annoying. So I think it's always finding a balance for yourself, because that's going to give you a lot more ability to be powerful. So not just, you don't need to just be a Jew or just be, an athlete. If that works for you, that's good too. I'm not saying that, but it's also very powerful to say, well, how can I use all the skills and resources to my ability to uplift me to where I want to go?
Yeah. I mean, again, another answer where I'm like, where do I even start? The one surprising thing to me was that comment about you don't like to win. You don't care if you win or lose. And me, I would say probably 2 years ago would be like, that's not true. Like winning is everything. And I'm a very, very competitive guy. Like you can ask any of my friends, like for example, so at University of Maryland, when I went to school, like senior year, we were playing football and my team lost, like we got shut out, and for no reason at all, like I ripped my shirt for no reason at all, because I was just so angry and I was so caught up in losing, or I was so caught up in winning that I was like, I have to win all the time. But then something changed where I started to really look at myself and actually listen to some really good podcasts. I'm reading this book right now called, it's a very famous book, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Atomic Habits. And the one thing that stuck out to me,
my friend just bought that book for me yesterday.
no way.
Yeah, bizarre.
Oh, okay. I don't want to spoil.
Things are connected. That's cool.
That's
And I read a lot, so it's funny that then you bring that up. That's very cool.
It's literally on my nightstand back there. And I don't want to spoil the book for you. The one thing that's really stood out to me was this concept that winners and losers will typically have the same process, meaning the outcome doesn't necessarily matter, right? Theoretically, if you're playing one-on-one, if Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan are playing one-on-one, right? One of them is going to win, one of them is going to lose, right? Are you going to argue that Kobe's a loser or Michael Jordan's a loser? No, that was just the outcome. So the point of the book essentially is that we all have habits, we all have processes, and it's not really about the outcome most of the time, because you could be doing something that's really good and just have to do it over and over and over and over again to get the outcome that you want. So it's interesting that you say that as somebody that's very fierce and competitive, that winning doesn't necessarily matter, in the sense that if you gave it your all and you don't win, you gave it your all. I think that's really a lost mentality today, where people are focused on results like this, right? And especially for somebody that started doing this podcast, right? I was like that. I had a goal of reaching 1,000 monthly listeners by the end of year one, and I'm not even close to that right now. So right. I got a lot of work to do. But point being is that, like, when you realize that two things: one, your process is the most important thing, right? How you do things, your habits are absolutely the most important things. And yes, I'm being skewed because I'm currently reading Atomic Habits. But the second part is that this takes process over time. It's not, nothing's instantaneous, which I'm sure you could speak about for not only your Spartan career, but also getting on all of these game shows, right? Like you've been on now 3 game shows, and that just doesn't happen overnight, right? That takes hard work and dedication. That's only the best of the best that get there. So maybe talk a little bit about your process in, now that we're on the topic of processes and
Yeah.
habits.
I'll
Maybe
say,
talk. Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
say, by the way, not only the athlete part, I'll say in my private practice.
Yeah.
You see a lot of people who, I deal with a lot of, I see kids, but I also deal with 20 to 32-year-olds, through life adjustments, anxiety and depression, because I'm somewhat holistic as well. So I see it a lot where people want to be somewhere based off of the narrative in their head, right? Which might be or not, might not be reality. I'm
Right.
going to go one step further. What is winning? Not to sound like a therapist,
What is
right?
what? By
What
to
the hell
answer
is
that,
winning? I mean, unless it's a war or a championship, right? What is winning for the average day person, right?
yeah.
And I'm going to go super deep here, and I could be incorrect, and I know people have lots of opinions, and I'm not saying this is the answer. But for me, right, my understanding of it is winning is having the other person who is the loser know that they are the loser and that you are the winner and that they are under you and or potentially feel like a loser. Aside from winning money, right? We're talking about everyday things, right? Is making someone feel lesser than me. Why does that make me feel better? Because I feel like garbage usually, and I need the other person to feel like that. And that's a bullying construct, right? That's bullies, right? And I'm not calling everybody bullies, but the only outcome that happens from winning and losing is the other person feels like a loser. And the only reason why you feel like a winner is because that person lost. Because why do I care if I won? What did I gain? I gained nothing, right? Didn't gain anything. Maybe I
Huh.
gained skills and things like that. That's a deep thought that I have worked on a little bit. I've
That's
thought.
interesting. And kind of
What
to
do you say?
sorry to interrupt all that, but what about on the individual level? For me, I'm a creature of habit, right? Everybody is. If I win the day, right? For example, my goals right now are going to the gym every day in the morning, right? Getting a good workout at least 5 days a week. I have these goals.
Yeah.
Uh, Making sure that I know this is not a super lofty goal, but making sure I put on tefillin at least once a week. That's a must. Making sure that I read a certain number of books, making sure that I have a certain, so like on a daily basis, right? And like I can show you right here, and I've shown this before, like I have sticky notes right here and I write things down and I cross them out. So if I do that, I win. So my question is, if by your definition, and I know you were giving it in a context of somebody losing, somebody winning, if I do everything that I wanted to do in the day and I consider that a win, who's losing?
So by that definition, right? I would say my gut was to say your past self because you're getting better, right? That was my gut instinct to your question of who's losing. But if we take it where I was going, which is those are tools. One of the things that we've lost is our identity. We are in an identity crisis. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we all have to get very used to is realizing that we are powerful, wonderful human beings. And that's a hard thing to say because at the same time we're capable of great horrific things, right? So that's a conflict,
Right.
maybe that's what we're all running from.
Right.
But simpler than that is if we do want to be better people by the definition of what we want to do. Those are the things to get there for us. But who we are, the same way we're capable of great harm, we're capable of great good.
Mm-hmm.
And all you're doing by setting those sticky notes and setting those things is you're choosing the great good instead of the great harm, whatever that definition to you is.
I see.
Right? It's at least a positive strength construct instead of a negative
Right.
construct. So I don't think it's right or wrong. And by the way, we'll pull it to the, because we're super deep, but we'll pull it to the kids in my nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
When you go through great struggle and you go through great challenge day in and day out, you're going to learn how to sink or swim very, very quickly. And almost always the option is to not sink. Right? And I had a story with Brady, who was an athlete of ours, who was asked by a little girl, and she said, "Brady, you're the most positive person I know. How are you so positive?" And his answer was, "Well, the alternative isn't an option." Because he has a lot to there's a lot of challenge day in and day out, and he chose to be the positive, right? To overcome the challenges in the positive light instead of the negative light. And that's really all the decisions and all the choices that we have. So winning really is choosing to be my best self and the positive instead of the negative, which is harming someone else. Not that that's harming, that's a harsh word to use, but gaining through a negative construct, whether emotionally, physically, or whatever that is. So being proud of who you are, and as we started. So the kids in the nonprofit really taught that to me, that we have really only one choice, and that could mean 1,000 things for other people, but it's really staying to that positive construct, really staying to what we're able to do, whether for others and ourselves, to uplift people or to suppress them. And that's a choice that we all have.
I again, like, just like the last two questions, I'm just like, what do I ask next? I have too many things.
Nonprofit.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, I think that's good. It'll get us out of this deep conversation. All right, so let's talk about your nonprofit. Let's talk about the kids. So your main focus is to help kids with physical challenges participate in these these obstacle courses or Spartan races, and you have, I mean, you just have a ton of options for them, and you're basically giving them an opportunity to do something that people count them out for, right?
100%.
Like, and again, this is not to be mean at all, but if you look at a kid that's physically challenged, a normal person, normal given person, kid that's physically challenged, right? You are probably saying he can't do the Spartan race. He can't do this athletic thing, right? That's the norm. And you're changing that, right? You're giving them that opportunity to actually, not only, it's not that they can't do it, it's that they're not in the right environment to do it. And you're giving them that environment.
You crushed,
So,
by the way.
yeah,
That's well said.
I listen, you're crushing it. I'm just telling the story here.
No, because it's very hard for people to hear that. Basically, we all do that. We're all human. We all judge, categorize, label, right? We're all very, very good at that. And a lot of that is psychologically for survival context, right? Evolutionarily in that point. Let's not get upset. Evolutionarily wise, Hashem and evolution can coexist. But simply put, to your point, it's funny when you say I'm helping the kids. It happens very often where people come to me and they say, "Michael, I want to help the kids," and I go, "That's not how this works. They're the ones that are going to be helping you. Trust me, right?
Wow.
And trust me, you're not doing anything. You might be lifting a kid and assisting, but you're not helping anybody. I mean, but we're all, of course they are, but in that context of what really happens psychologically. And I'll start what you just said, with a fascinating story, which is Ari Cohen, who is the life force of Ji4Life, and his mother, and they were there from day one. And it's our first Spartan race. I'm gonna articulate, put you there. And he shows up, and you say I completely not. And I'm gonna go back for a second. It's not our fault half the time, by the way, even the majority of the time. Our brains are wired to read what the environment is telling us. We have 80,000 or 8 to 8. It's either 8 or 80,000. I can't remember, of advertisements a day that we get in our world.
Yes.
That's going to influence us. We are tribalistically trying to copy our environment to survive. So I am naturally, to what you were saying, going to judge, if that's the word, but yes, make an assumption of Ari coming in to the race, a 3-mile race. It's our first race. I've never done it before. I've never taken the kids. I don't have that skill set yet. And I went to Ari's mom and I said, listen, he's in a wheelchair and we're going to go through the race. I said, I think what we should do is start the first half mile. There's one obstacle, and then we'll cut halfway through and we'll go to the end. And there's like 4 or 5 obstacles that we'll all do together. And, we'll hop him through, and then we'll finish, and we'll, give him his medal and make him feel good. And his mom, looked at me straight in the eye and say, that's not going to happen. He's going to do the whole thing. Just you wait, go. And that basically was what it was. And I was like, oh, kind of shoulders down. Okay. And not only did we, take him through, he did 7 to 10 obstacles by himself, which again shows you the power of people who see the positive, who say there's an obstacle, I'm going to do whatever I can to get through it. Why? Because he goes through challenges every day. When I was training for Ninja, he came to watch me train. And it's a really powerful story for my life, where I was, can say the word failing at an obstacle over and over and over and over. And my forearms, if you do Ninja, they just lock up, blood gets in there. And I'm like, all right, that's it. Body said no. And Ari signed to his mom, do it again. And she said, do it again. And I said, I can't. She said, you think that Ari says no when he has to go into the hospital? You think he says no when he has another surgery? You think he has a choice? You do it again. And there's many different stories from my nonprofit, down from Chaya Ruth, mile 10 of a 13-half marathon, not, having anything left. And I said, should we stop? Should we go off to the side? Let's take a breath. And she said, no, if I stop now, it's over. So she closed her eyes. She said to her, her teammate, just take me, guide me to where to go. She closed her eyes and she just, had the person guide her, kept going, went a little slower. And then, with the last mile, was able to do it on her own. I don't know, she's still doing it, but let's just keep going. Let's adapt. Let's do different things. So when you're subjugated to those challenges, you're either, you have a choice. And I hope that's the message for everyone. You said, you're not at 1,000. Who cares? If one person here is inspired and then goes and changes their life, even 20% out of 80, that's terrific. Hashem, God wanted us here, and there we go. Amazing, amazing. We're so fascinated with the big life-changing stories that, it has to be the all or nothing. And it's very simple than just saying, you're choosing the positive. Great job, dude. Right? You're trying to make an impact. You're trying to be a better human being.
Hmm.
Great job. Because that's what these kids do every day. And they don't have a choice. They don't really have the choice to be negative because they're surviving. They're in survival mode. And
Right.
so what our nonprofit does is it gives it the environment to unleash the superpower and strength that they already do every single day. When we've really built a nonprofit that is very geared on making it about the kids.
Hmm.
It's not, it's trying to, we try to take our ego out of what the kids need and what this environment needs. And a lot of times that's very hard. But I have my support system that has guided me and gotten me there for the nonprofit, for these
Hmm.
people that just are there to um, assist me and be there with me in the thick of things of trying to figure this thing out of how to create a community that feels itself in 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Hmm.
Right? That's what communities are supposed to do. That there's, but you just create that construct and that system for them to follow, and to put their own power into that system, and it can change and go from there. So, um, yeah, this nonprofit is something that un- is about what is best for the kids. How do we be there for the kids? How can and we're not perfect like that. My ego sneaks in, but I hope 10% of the time, you know. Um, and that's I'll take that statistic. I'll take that 90% that it's for their kids, and we really have created this system where everybody is there for each other, and everyone's grinding, and if people are falling behind, we lift them up, and we've done whatever is best because we have a Disney race weekend coming up that really logically wasn't a smart thing to do, but we said the kids need this right now. It's a wellness retreat Shabbaton,
Wow.
a lot of effort. Um, but it's happening and it's unbelievable and it's gonna and I didn't have finances for it, but it came through and it's unbelievable. So thank you, Hashem, and thank you to all the kids and everyone that allows me to tell their stories because there's so many stories of these
Oh,
kids accomplishing crazy things.
Michael, you don't understand. My next question to you, and unfortunately it's gonna be my last question, but my next question was gonna be or my next comment was gonna be you're so good at telling other people's stories. I swear. That was literally the comment that was gonna come out of my mouth. Actually crazy that you said that at the end there. So with that being said, you're very good not only telling your kids stories, you're good at telling your story, right? You're very very good at it. But when it comes to this realm of marketing and branding and telling people who you are and wanting people to know who you are, the only thing that matters is how other people tell your story, right? If Ji4Life, what you disagree with it?
Yeah.
All right, let's. Why don't you agree?
Because who cares what other people think? And I'm going to say it this way: not who cares. That's a little harsh. It shouldn't matter. And the reason I say that is, if you know who you are and you know the good things that you're doing in this world, and you've said brand a couple times, and that's okay. And I understand people say it. I don't even think like I don't resonate with brand
Yep.
because I said it every day I change. So how can there still be a same brand? Right?
Hmm.
And a brand is trying to tell people to buy into what you're selling. But what if I'm not selling anything? What if I don't know what I'm selling? What if I'm still figuring that shit out?
Hmm.
And we should all be still figuring that shit out. That's the connectiveness with Hashem. He's giving you information every single day. You have not figured it out, and you will never figure it out
Wow.
because there's too much data. There's too much things in the world. You can't compute it all. Even gamblers at poker who have every single hand down to a mathematical equation of this is a 96% hand, this is a 40% hand. They've got it. They still put 3% of not getting the mathematical equation right.
Mm-hmm.
There is no perfection. There is no. So why I stopped you, and I appreciate you allowing me to stop you, is I think it's a very important message for all of us is no one's got it figured out. My favorite thing in therapy is someone saying to me, so what do you think, Michael? And I go, me? You think I'm the one with the answers? Really? I have information and certain perspectives and data of understanding how the brain works and how emotions work and how wellness works and how to put it all together. I can assist you. And I think that's the important thing is that we're all here to assist each other. And so, yes, I'm glad that maybe some people can be inspired by my stories and my information that I've gathered,
Mm-hmm.
but that's only paying it forward because other people, like the kids in the nonprofit, have given that to me. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say thank you for butting heads. Like I appreciate that because I think it makes for good conversation.
And I'm
And
not saying I'm right, by the way. It's my perspective.
it's your opinion.
And,
Your
and
opinion.
and also each person needs to do that for themselves, right? People need to make
Exactly.
decisions for themselves. They need to say, okay,
Exactly.
I need a brand to get me where I want to go.
Right. Right. And yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I'm gonna take away from this episode is this idea. I believe this idea of a brand, personal branding is very skewed. I really think it's more in line of what you were saying. Like, how can you? The thing that really stuck with me is how can you have a brand if you're changing all the time, right? By definition, a brand is finite. You know exactly what it is, what you're getting, but how can you have that when you're changing all the time? So that's actually a very fascinating way of looking at personal branding and branding as a whole that me as a marketing major did not even cross my mind. So, I mean, Michael, you know this, listeners know
I have a
this.
quick question for you. I have a quick question before
All
we end.
right. Okay. What's your
I have
question?
a quick question for you.
Yeah.
What is one thing you've taken away? Because I was curious about this. I thought about this. What's one thing that you've taken? We'll end with me asking about you. We'll begin with me asking about you, and then we'll end with me asking about you. To end it off, what you've talked with a lot of interesting people on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's the concept of a podcast is you're gathering large amounts of information for people to take with them into the world.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned and gathered from the dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people that have given you different information? What's kind of not even the takeaway? What is and not the thing that you've learned? What has helped you in your journey through all the information that you've gathered?
I was thinking about this today, and I think the one thing that is a common thread with all of my guests, if not most of them, is this idea that they're all wealthy. And I'm not talking about money at all. I'm talking about these people have a wealth of information, a wealth of passion, a wealth of expertise, right? You're coming on my podcast because you know how to talk about yourself, you know how to present yourself in a good light, and you have a good story. And on top of that, you're very proud you. That's really what it comes down to. And
And
for
have
me,
gathered all the information and have done the work to gather whatever they're talking about, right? They put in the sweat and tears, their
yes,
their their skill set and appreciating. What I'm hearing is you're appreciating their ability of the wealth of knowledge they collected on what they're doing to be able to hand it over.
It's really remarkable. And for somebody like me who's young and has their entire career ahead of them, I think it's just a good way for going back to what you're saying during the episode, what does life come down to? Relationships, right? And this is how you start relationships right here. So, some of my guests I connect with more than others, right? Like what you and I are doing right now. This is a good connection. Not to say that other guests aren't good connections, but this one is especially strong, I can tell, relative to my other guests. I really think it's kind of twofold. One, it's I get this wealth of information, and two, you got to be accountable. Like you're saying, it's there's no and this is going to sound very controversial, but there's no easy day in life. Like once you accept the fact that you are going to go through the riptide, that you are going to get hurt, you're going to get torn to shreds. God forbid you lose a family member. God forbid this happens, that happens. You lose your business, you lose this, you lose that. It's been easier for me to accept the fact that stuff is going to go wrong and I'm going to take it like a champ. And that way, and trust me, I have pretty bad anxiety. Like there are things that I get very anxious about. Once I accepted that, life has just been so much better.
People also, to add to your point,
Yeah.
people will make the issues, the pain, the death in the family and all those things, they're going to make that in their own head. So now they've created their own riptide a lot of times. However, to the main point that you brought, which is brilliant and very important for people to know, it's why ice baths are so popular right now. And I've been doing ice baths since I was 15 years old. You can't every day the environment, like when you do an ice bath, you're never ready for it. And it's a wonderful thing. It could be an easy one, whatever that means.
Yeah.
People have like, oh, it's so hard. And it's never the same thing.
Right.
And that's what environment does. Environment is a ecosystem. It has, veins and systems to it. And it's very complex. You're never going to get the same thing. And for some weird reason in our society, probably from a tribalistic structure, need everything and from a control aspect, need everything to be the same way because, that means, I guess, I'm safe or I can live more or whatever that reason is. Not possible. You can't predict things, and every day is going to be a different riptide and different ice bath. Your emotions are beautiful. Allow them to come in. Allow them to teach you what is needed. The more you hold that door at that emotion that is banging to get in, the more it's going to want to get in. Open that door. It's painful. It's going to come in. It's going to stab you. Let it into your house, let it into your subconscious, offer it coffee, offer it things, and allow it to come in, because pain is okay. Pain's fine. And being uncomfortable is fine. Obviously, real pain is, I'm simplifying something, real pain is real pain. I'm not going to take that away from people. But to where you said, it's going to happen. You might as well ride it and be uncomfortable and get you out of the riptide faster. And if it doesn't, that's okay too.
Exactly. Oh man. Well, Michael,
Amazing.
I think you need to tell people where to find you and where to find out more about your nonprofit. So please tell us, where can people find you on social media and learn more about your nonprofit?
I'm going to try something here.
Okay.
I'm curious to see how it's going to sound.
Okay.
If you are passionate about learning and feeling what we're doing at the nonprofit, I think eventually you'll find us.
Wow.
I don't want to be,
I have never had a guest say that. That's okay. So I'm not gonna tell. I mean, if you find the clips on social media, like you'll probably get to it. But if you're listening to the episode, like I guess if Hashem lets you find it, Hashem lets you find it.
I'm not trying to be obnoxious about it. I that's how I was feeling, and I think I think we're gonna leave it there. And
I love it.
For everybody listening, grateful for everybody giving the time and energy. I'm grateful for this was definitely thinking. I'm grateful for you. I really enjoy it. I love when we can come together and share information and things and have conversations that are uncomfortable or strong or hard,
Yes.
and grateful for you.
I'm so glad you enjoyed this week's episode of Schmoozing Time. Thank you so much for tuning in. In addition to sharing this episode with someone, make sure you follow on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube Shorts. Also, make sure you're following the show on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Until next time, keep schmoozing.